Hello everyone, today I'm going to bring you a presentation titled Voluspa, Poetic Prophecy. So this is based on a poem from the Poetic Edda. So just some information. It's the first poem of the Poetic Edda and one of the better known poems from the work. The Edda is a collection of poems compiled, though not authored, by Icelandic poet Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century. The source material for the Poetic Edda is the Codex Regius, arguably considered to be the most important source of Norse mythology. The titular Völva, witch or seeress, imparts her knowledge onto Odin and describes the course of history from the earliest events and eventually prophesies the downfall of the Aesir, the event known as Ragnarok. So what I'm going to do is I will read the poem in full, and as I go I will provide commentary. Hearing, I ask, from the holy races, from Heimdall's sons, both high and low, thou wilt, Valfather, that well I relate, old tales I remember, of men long ago. I remember yet the giants of yore, who gave me bread in the days gone by. 9 worlds I knew, the 9 in the tree, with mighty roots beneath the mould. Of old was the age when Ymir lived, sea nor cool waves nor sand there were. Earth had not been, nor heaven above, but a yawning gap and grass nowhere. Then Bur's sons lifted the level land, Mithgarth the mighty there they made. The sun from the south warmed the stones of earth, and green was the ground with growing leeks. So, holy races is a reference to mankind as a whole. Heimdall, he's the watchman of the gods. Heimdall's sons. Now, this is a possible reference to another poem later on in the Poetic Edda called the Rigsfula. So, in it, the titular Rig fathers the social classes of mankind. It's believed that Rig is Heimdall in disguise. So, Valfather, so that's addressing Odin. It literally means father of the slain. The 9 worlds refers to the 9 different sort of domains of the different races or in the world. So you've got the Aesir for Asgarth, the Vanir or the waves for Vanaheim, the elves in Elfheim, the men in Nifgarth, the giants in Jotunheim, fire for Muspelheim, the dark elves in Svartalheim, the dead in Niflheim, and the dwarves in Niflheim. The tree is a reference to Yggdrasil, the world ash symbolizing the universe, as displayed on the image on the right. Ymir is a reference to the giant whose body from which the world was made. The yawning gap. So before the world was made, there was just one great abyss called the Genanga Gap. Bur's sons is a reference to Odin's father, and Odin had 2 brothers, Vili and Ve. And leeks are a symbol of fine growth and believed to possess magical power. So the poem continues. The sun, the sister of the moon, from the south, her right hand cast over heaven's rim. No knowledge she had where her home should be. The moon knew not what might was his. The stars knew not where their stations were. Then sought the gods their assembly seats. The holy ones in council held. Names then gave they to noon and twilight. Morning they named, and the waning moon. Night and evening, the years to number. At Ithavol met the mighty gods. Shrines and temples they timbered high. Forges they set, and they smithied ore. Tongs they wrought, and tools they fashioned. In their dwellings at peace they played at tables. Of gold no lack did the gods then know, till thither came up giant maids free, huge of might, out of Jotunheim. So for stanza 5, it's believed this stanza refers to the northern summer night with the sun setting much later than usual. Also, what's interesting is the gender of the sun and moon are inverted, which is distinct from other cultures. For example, the ancient Greek culture. So Ithavol is the field of deeds, the meeting place of the gods. Tables refers to board games in Norse culture, such as the most prominent one being a Hnefatafel. So the giant maids is a reference to free Norns, which is the Norse equivalent of the free fates, a common theme in European folklore. They foretell the destiny of men. So we shall carry on with the poem. So, then sought the gods their assembly seats, the holy ones and council held, to find who should raise the race of dwarves out of Brimir's blood and the legs of Blaine. There was Motsognir, the mightiest maid, of all the dwarfs, and Durin next. Many a likeness of men they made, the dwarves in the earth, as Durin said. Nai and Nifi, Norfri and Sufri, Ostri and Vestri, Alfioth Dvalin, Nar and Nain, Niping and Dane, Ither, Botha, Bomba, Nori, An and Onar, I, Miofitnir, Vig and Gandalf, Vindalf, Frayne, Fek and Thorin, Fror, Vit and Lit, Nir and Nirath, now have I told, Regin and Rasvith, the last are right, Philly, Killy, Thundin, Gnarly, Heptifili, Hanna, Sphere, Fra, Hornbury, Freyg and Lome, Orvang, Yari, Einskindskjaldi, the race of the dwarves in Dvalin's throng, down to Lothar the list must I tell. The rocks they left, and through wet lands, they sought a home in the fields of sand. There were Draupnir and Dogs Thrasir, Hor, Hagswari, Helavang, Gloin, Dori, Ori, Duf, and Vari, Skirfir, Verthir, Scaffith, Alfin, Ingvi, Einskindskjaldi, Fayela, Frosty, Fifth, and Ginnar. So for all time shall the tale be known, the list of all the forebears of Lothar. So that series of stanzas I just read, it's believed to be an interpolated section, so it's believed to basically have been added in at a later date and not part of the original text. So it contains many names of dwarves. Anyone listening may recognise some of these as belonging to characters in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. The most prominent one being Gandalf, and the most obvious one. So Tolkien was heavily inspired by Norse mythology, so he just borrowed a lot of the names for his characters. The name Regin is mentioned, but it's unlikely to be the same Regin who features in the Regin's Mole and Fafnir Mole. So again, these are more poems that are in the Poetic Edda. Dvalin is mentioned in the Havamal, yet another very important poem in the Edda. As the one who gave magic runes to the dwarves, he is also mentioned in the Fafnir Mole as the father of some of the lesser Norns. Andvari features prominently in the Regins Mole, whereby Loki robs him of his wealth. A curse had been placed on the treasure, which leads to the deaths of Sigurd, Gunnar, Atli, and many others. Then from the throng did three come forth, from the home of the gods, the mighty and gracious. Two without fate on the land they found, Ask and Embla, empty of might. Soul they had not, sense they had not, heat nor motion nor goodly hue. Soul gave Odin, sense gave Honir, heat gave Lothar and goodly hue. And ash I know, Yggdrasil its name, with water white is the great tree wet. Thence come the dews that fall in the dales, green by earth's well does it ever grow. Thence come the maidens mighty in wisdom, free from the dwelling down neath the tree. Earth is one named, Fandi the next, on the wood they scored and sculled the third. Laws they made there, and life allotted to the sons of men, and set their fates. So, stanza 17 there, it's believed that some of the original text is missing, as there's no apparent link between the three of this stanza who were the three gods of Honir, Lothar, and Odin, and the three Norns. So Ash, or Ask, and Embla. In standard English, this means ash and elm. They're the first man and woman who are made out of trees by the three gods. Honir, not much is known about him other than he tends to appear alongside Odin and Loki, and he survives the destruction and assured the gift of prophecy. He was given by the gods as hostage to the Wains in exchange for Nioth. So Earth, Fandi, and Skuld. This means past, present, and future are the names of the three Norns who carve magic signs on runes or pieces of wood which control the fates of men. So, the war I remember, the first in the world, when the gods with spears had smitten Gullveig, and in the hall of Hor had burned her, 3 times burned and 3 times born. often again, yet ever she lives. Hythe they named her who sought their home, the wide-seeing witch in magic wise. Mind she bewitched that were moved by her magic, to evil woman a joy she was. On the host his spear did Odin hurl, then in the worlds did war first come. The wall that girdled the gods was broken, and field by the warlike wains was trodden. Then sought the gods their assembly seats, the holy ones in council held, whether the gods should tribute give, or to all alike should worship belong. So the war here refers to a conflict between the two groups of gods. You have the Asir and the Vanir, or the Wains, both of whom were worships in common. As part of the treaty which ended the war, there was an exchange of hostages, as previously alluded to. The Vanir consists of the gods Nioth and his children Freya and Freya, as well as an extended family of Nerthus, Dagger, Dellinger, and Not. We know little of the Vanir outside of a connection to the natural world through an association with the sun. Golvaig, or Goldmike in standard English, is the first of the Vanir to come among the gods whose mistreatment caused the war. Most academics accept the claim that she is another name for the goddess Freya. You have Hor, which is another reference to Odin. It means just the High One. Haith means Shiny One. It's a name that's often applied to a wise woman or prophetess. It's placed after the introduction of Golvaig, could be a reference to magic and destructive power of gold. It's also possible that the Volva is referring to herself. So, then the gods sought their assembly seats, the holy ones in council held, to find who with venom the air had filled, or had given offspring to the giant's brood. In swelling rage then rose up Thor, seldom he sits when he hears such things. And the oaths were broken, the words and bonds, the mighty pledges between them made. So here we've got quite a short story. So the standards refer to an oath the gods made to a giant, who they sought to rebuild Asgard after the war with the Vanir. The giant demanded the sun, the moon, and Freya as wife. The gods employed Loki to delay the giant through a trick so as to not finish the work within the stipulated time. This enraged the giant, who threatened the gods for then slays the giant. The failure to honour their oath led to enmity between the giants and gods, with the former joining in with the final battle. I know of the horn of Heimdall hidden, under the high-reaching holy tree. On it there pours from Valfather's pledge a mighty stream, would you know yet more? Alone I sat when the old one sought me, the terror of gods, and gazed in mine eyes. What hast thou to ask? Why comest thou hither? Odin, I know where thine eye is hidden. I know where Odin's eye is hidden. Deep in the wide-famed well of Mimir, mead from the pledge of Odin each morn, does Mimir drink, would you know yet more? Necklaces had I, and rings from here, father. Wise was my speech, and my magic wisdom. Widely I saw over all the worlds. On all sides saw I Valkyries assemble, ready to ride to the ranks of the gods. Skuld bore the shield, and Skogul rode next. Guf, Hild, Gondel, and Geirskogul. Of Herjan's maidens the list have ye heard, Valkyries ready to ride over the earth. So here, the original stanzas I was reading there were just sort of the Volva providing Odin a sort of a chronicle of events that had happened in myth up to that point. But from now, here she's turning to Odin's own sort of search for knowledge. And the prophecy begins properly. So, here we've got the Horn of Heimdall in the image on the right, the Gayala horn, or shrieking horn of the Watchman god, which will be blown to summon the gods to the last battle. Valfather's pledge, Odin gifted his eye to the giant Mimir in exchange for the wisdom. Odin lets Mimir drink mead from the eye, and the latter then pours water from his well onto Yggdrasil. The Volva then addresses Odin directly, asking would he know yet more, affirming why he has sought her out to begin with. So Odin's search for knowledge is but one of the disasters that leads to the destruction of the gods. Here, father is just another reference to Odin. Valkyries, the etymology or direct meaning is choosers of the slain. They bring the bravest warriors to Valhall, or Hall of the Slain, in order to reinforce the gods for the final struggle. Herjan, another reference to Odin, and literally means leader of hosts. So, I saw for Balder, the bleeding god, the son of Odin, his destiny set, famous and fair in the lofty fields, full-grown in strength the mistletoe stood. From the branch which seemed so slender and fair came a harmful shaft that Hoth should hurl, but the brother of Balder was born ere long, and one night old fought Odin's son. His hands he washed not, his hair he combed not, till he bore to the bale blaze Balder's foe. But in Fensalir did Frigg weep sore, for Valhall's need, would you know yet more? Then did Vali slaughter bonds twist, made verily grim were those fetters of Gats. One did I see in the wet woods bound, a lover of ill, and to Loki like. By his side does Sigyn sit, nor is glad to see her mate, would you know yet more? So those series of stanzas describe another of the great tragedies, which is the death of Odin's son Balder. So Loki tricks Balder's blind brother Hoth into hurling a mistletoe at Balder, which kills him. So Balder was known for being very tough and almost invincible, and believed nothing could kill him. The exception to this was the mistletoe. So Odin begats another son, Vali, who then slays Hoth. Fensalir or Fenhalls is the domain of Frigg, who's Odin's wife, and Balder's mother, symbolising the setting sun. Loki is punished by being bound to a rock by the guts of his son Narfi, who Vali had also slain. A serpent was also fastened above Loki's head to drip venom onto him. Loki's wife Sigyn sits behind him with a basin to catch the venom. This is to no avail, as when she leaves to empty the basin, the venom drips onto Loki, and the earth shakes with his struggles until the end of time. From the east there pours through poisoned vales, with swords and daggers the river Slith. Northward a hall in Nithavalir, of gold there rose for Sindri's race, and in Okolnir another stood, where the giant Brimir his beer hall had. A hall I saw, far from the sun. On Nastrond it stands, and the doors face north. Venom drops through the smoke vent down, from around the walls do serpents wind. I saw there wading through rivers wild, treacherous men, and murderers too, and workers of ill with the wives of men. Their Nifhog suck the blood of the slain, and the wolf tore men, would you know yet more? So these stanzas describe the homes of various enemies of the gods. So Slith, which means the fearful, is a river in the giant's home. Swords and daggers could represent icy cold. Sindri is the great gold worker of the dwarves. Okolnir, or the not cold, possibly a volcano of some form. Nastrond, or the corpse strand, is the land of the dead ruled by the goddess Hel, where the wicked are tortured. Smoke vent could be a reference to the fact that certain Norse or Icelandic houses had an opening in the roof instead of a chimney. Nithhog, or the dead biter, the dragon that lies beneath Yggdrasil and gnaws at its roots by symbolising destructive aspects of the universe. The wolf is presumably the wolf Fenrir, one of the children of Loki, and the giantess Angrabotha, others being Midgard, Sorma, and Hel. Bound by the chain Gleipnir, fashioned by a dwarf from Six Things, the noise of the cat's step, the beards of women, the roots of mountains, the nerves of bears, the breaths of fishes, and the spittle of birds. The chaining of Fenrir cost the god Tyr his right hand. The giantess old in ironwood sat, in the east, and bore the brood of Fenrir. Among these one, in monster's guise, was soon to steal the sun from the sky. There feeds he full on the flesh of the dead, and the home of the gods he reddens with gore. Dark grows the sun, and in summer soon come mighty storms, would you know yet more? On a hill there sat, and smote on his harp, Egfor the joyous, the giant's warder. Above him the cock in the birdwood crowed, fair and red did Fiala stand. Then to the gods crowed Golinkambi. He wakes the heroes in Odin's hall, and beneath the earth does another crow, the rust-red bird at the bars of hell. Now Garm howls loud before Nipalir. The vessels will burst and the wolf run free. Much do I know, and more can I see. Of the face of the gods, the mighty in fight. So the giantess, her name isn't mentioned, but we know that she had 2 children with Fenrir, Skoll and Hati, who steal the sun and moon respectively. Egther is the watchman of the giants. He's the counterpart to Heimdall and Surt, a giant from the fire world. Fayella, the cock whose crow wakes the giants for the final struggle. He then has a counterpart in Golinkambi for the gods, and the rust-red bird for hell. Garm is the dog who guards the gates of hell, the underworld, seeing the image on the right with hell herself. And Nipalir, meaning the cliff cave, is the entrance to the world of the dead. So, brothers shall fight and fell each other, and sisters' sons shall kinship stain. Hard is it on earth with mighty whoredom, axe time, sword time, shields asundered, wind time, wolf time, ere the world falls, nor ever shall men each other spare. Fast move the sons of Mim, and fate is heard in the note of the Gyala horn. Loud blows Heimdall, the horn is aloft, in fear quake all who on hell's roads are. Yggdrasil shakes and shiver on high, the ancient limbs and the giant is loose. To the head of Mim does Odin give heed, but the kinsmen of Surt shall slay him soon. How fare the gods, how fare the elves? All Jotunheim groans, the gods are at council. Loud roar the dwarves by the doors of stone, the masters of the rocks, would you know yet more? Now Garm howls loud before Nipalir, the fetters will burst and the wolf run free. Much do I know, and more can I see, of the fate of the gods, the mighty in fight. So here, sisters' sons, in Germanic culture, uncles and nephews have a rather close relationship. The sons of Mim refers to spirits of water. The giant here is another reference to the wolf Fenrir. Head of Mim, another reference back to Mim or Mimir again. So Mim was given as a hostage to the Vanir, who then cut off his head and returned it to the gods. So Odin preserved his head so it could speak, thereby preserving Mim's wisdom. However, this is completely inconsistent with the previous notes and references to Mim. So kinsman of Surt is another reference to Fenrir, who slays Odin in the final battle. From the east comes Herm with shield held high. In giant wrath does the serpent writhe. Over the waves he twists, and the tawny eagle. Nor's corpse is screaming, Naglfar is loose. Over the sea from the east there sails a ship, with the people of Muspel at the helm stands Loki. After the wolf do wild men follow, and with them the brother of Byleist grows. Surt fares from the south with the scourge of branches. The son of the battle gods shone from his sword. The crags are sundered, the giant women sink. Now the dead throng hell way, and heaven is cloven. Now comes to Hilin yet another hurt, when Odin fares to fight with the wolf, and Beli's fair slayer seeks out Surt, for there must fall the joy of Frigg. So Herm is the leader of the giants. The serpent is a reference to Midgardsormr, who was cast into the sea and completely encircles the land. The eagle is a reference to the giants Hraesvelga, which means corpse eater, who sits at the edge of heaven in the form of an eagle and makes the wind with his wings. Naglfar is the ship that is helmed by Herm and carries the giants to battle and is fashioned out of dead men's nails. Brother of Byleist is a reference to Loki, but not much is known about Byleist himself. The scourge of branches is fire. Hlyn is another name for Frigg. After losing her son Balder, she's fated to witness the death of Odin at the hands of Fenrir. Beli's slayer is a reference to the god Frey, who slays Beli with his fist. And then you have the joy of Frigg. It possibly could be a reference to Odin or Frey. Then comes Sigvar's mighty son, Bifar to fight with the foaming wolf. In the giant's son does he thrust his sword. Full to the heart his father is avenged. Thither comes the son of Hlothin, The bright snake gapes to heaven above, and against the serpent goes Odin's son. In anger smites the warder of earth. Forth from their homes must all men flee. 9 paces fares the son of Fjorgen, and slain by the serpent fearless he sinks. The sun turns black, earth sinks in the sea. The hot stars down from heaven are whirled. Fierce grows the steam and the life-feeding flame, till fire leaps high above heaven itself. So Sigfather here is another reference to Odin. It literally means father of victory. His son Vithar is the silent god, famed chiefly for his great shield and his strength, which is a little less than Thor's. He actually survives the destruction. The giant sun, yet another reference to Fenrir. Lothin is another name for Yorf, Thor's mother. Odin is his father. The snake is another reference to Midgardsormr. So the Warder of Earth in stanza 56 is, again, as a title for Thor. The son of Fjorgen is another reference to Thor. Fjorgen can appear in both a masculine and feminine form, the latter which is used in the Voluspa. The gender forms refer either to Odin or Yorf respectively. Thor succumbs to the serpent's venom after slaying it. And then in stanza 57, this stands as the end of the account of the destruction. So the last several stanzas are all dealing with the aftermath. Now Garm howls loud before Nipahelir. The fetters will burst and the wolf ran free. Much do I know and more can see of the face of the gods, the mighty in fight. Now do I see the earth anew, rise all green from the waves again. The cataracts fall and the eagle flies, and fish he catches beneath the cliffs. The gods in Ithafel meet together, of the terrible girdler of earth they talk, and the mighty past they call to mind, and the ancient runes of the ruler of gods. In wondrous beauty once again shall the golden table stand amid the grass, which the gods had owned in the days of old. Then fields unsowed bear ripened fruit. All ills grow better, and Balder comes back. Balder and Hoth dwell in Hrop's battle hall, and the mighty gods would you know yet more. Then Honir wins the prophetic wand, and the sons of the brothers of Tvegi abide. In Vindheim now would you know yet more. More fair than the sun a hall I see, roofed with gold, on Gimli it stands. There shall the righteous rulers dwell, and happiness ever there shall they have. There comes on high all power to hold, a mighty lord, all lands he rules. From below the dragon dark comes forth, Nifhog flying from Niflheol. The bodies of men on wings he bears, the serpent bright, but now I must sink. So that is the end of the poem. So just to go over the last few references in that final section. So stanza 59, this stanza begins the description of the new world that will rise after the ruin of the old. Some critics argue that signifies that the poem was written after the introduction of Christianity, but this is disputed. Girdle of Earth, this is another reference to Midgardsormr. Ruler of Gods is a reference to Odin. The brothers Balder and Hoth return together, their union being a symbol of the new age of peace. Hropt is another name for Odin. Battle Hall is a reference to Valhall. Honir, in the New Age, he has the ability to foretell the future. Tvegi means the twofold, another name for Odin. Vindheim, or Home of the Wind, a realm of heaven inhabited by the Althar. Stanza 65, it has been suggested that this stanza refers to the Christian God and possibly, again, an interpolation. I mean, that is also a particularly controversial stanza and is hotly debated. And then the final stanza is also possibly an interpolation, as it fits very badly with the rest of the poem. The suggestion is that the dragon Nidhogg makes a last attempt to rise and is destroyed, an event marking the end of evil in the world. The Volta herself then sinks back into the underworld. So now that we've actually gone through the poem and all the various references, I just want to now do a little bit where we go over the sort of observations of some important thinkers who try to place the Voluspa into its sort of correct and important cultural and historical context. So firstly, I turn to Julius Evola, who has this to say in his book Revolt Against the Modern World. From the top of Mount Meru, which was considered to be a pole, the original homeland of mankind and the Olympian seat of gods, and from the golden top of their ancient Asgard, which was believed to be the seat of the Asir and of the divine, Nordic kings located in the middle abode, to the Pure Land, and to equivalent locations portrayed in Chinese traditions, time and time again we find the concept of the original cycle, in which the spiritual quality, symbolized by gold, had its definitive and most eminent manifestation. We may also assume that in several myths that mention the deposit or the transmission of something closely related to the primordial tradition. According to the Edit myth, immediately following the Ragnarok, a new race and a new sun will arise. Then the Asir will be brought together again, and they will discover the mysterious golden tablets that they possessed in the time of the origins. So here at Evola, he's speaking in the context of the doctrine of the four ages. So there's the gold, silver, bronze, and iron. So the gold age is the greatest and the best age. And so, however, this over time degenerates through a silver, a bronze, and eventually an iron age, or as Evola's preferred term, a dark age or Kali Yuga in the Indian tradition. The cycle then repeats itself over again. With the Gold Age in particular, as you no doubt would have heard, there are several references to gold in the poem. So you've got the mention of golden tablets and the goldenness of the Asir. Even, the goddess Freyja, who potentially was known as Gullveig. So if we move on from Evola, we now have Oswald Spengler. So here's what Spengler has to say in Decline of the West. With ideas like these, the mythopoetic force of the Faustian soul is returning to its origins. It was at the outset of the Gothic, just at the time when the first mechanical clocks were being built, that the myth of the world's end, Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, arose. It may be that, like all the reputedly old German myths, Ragnarok, whether in the Voluspa form or as in the Christian Muspili, was modelled more or less on classical and particularly Christian apocalyptic motives. Nevertheless, it is the expression and symbol of the Faustian and of no other soul. The Olympian College is historyless. It knows no becoming, no epochal moments, no aim, but the passionate thrust into distance is Faustian. Force, will, has an aim, and where there is an aim, there is for the inquiring eye an end, that which the perspective of oil painting expressed by the means of the vanishing point. The Baroque park, by its point, that is, of a willed directness, assumed here the form of the concept. The Faust of the second part is dying, for it has reached his soul. What the myth of Gotterdammerung signified of old, the irreligious form of it, the theory of entropy, signifies today, world's end as completion of an inwardly necessary evolution. So what I feel Spengler is trying to say there is that the Ragnarok was an inevitability of the Norse myth, and it would seem a self-fulfilling prophecy, as though Odin is told what would happen, he does nothing to try and avert it. This then bleeds through into man is incapable of averting the course of his own destruction. And finally, we come to the third thinker, which is Arnold Toynbee. So here's what Toynbee has to say in the study of history. It is clear that if the geneses of civilizations are not the result of biological factors or of geographical environment acting separately, they must be the result of some kind of interaction between them. In other words, the factor which we are seeking to identify is something not simple but multiple, not an entity but a relation. We have the choice of conceiving this relation either as an interaction between two inhuman forces or as an encounter between two superhuman personalities. Let us yield our minds to the second of these two conceptions. Perhaps it will lead us towards the light. An encounter between two superhuman personalities is the plot of the sum of the greatest dramas that the human imagination has conceived. An encounter between Yahweh and the serpent is the plot of the fall of man in the book of Genesis. A second encounter between the same antagonists, transfigured by a progressive enlightenment of Syriac souls, is the plot of the New Testament, which tells the story of the redemption. An encounter between the Lord and Satan is the plot of the book of Job. An encounter between the Lord and Mephistopheles is the plot of Goethe's Faust. An encounter between gods and demons is the plot of the Scandinavian Voluspa. An encounter between Artemis and Aphrodite is the plot of Euripides' Hippolytus. Later on, Toynbee has another quote. In the Scandinavian version, destruction is likewise the outcome in Ragnarok, when gods and demons slay and are slain, though the unique genius of the author of Voluspa makes his Sibyl's vision pierce the gloom to behold the light of a new dawn beyond it. So Toynbee here is presenting a new dawn after the Ragnarok. So, as outlined in the Voluspa, a successful response to the challenge of prophetic doom. So it's also quite ironic because Toynbee lists several civilizations, and he has a couple of civilizations that he calls the abortive civilizations. So these are the civilizations that fail to pass stage 1, which he calls the Genesis. And so the Scandinavian pagans are an abortive, as in they fail this. And he argues this is because they fail to meet the challenge of Western peaceful penetration through religious conversion. So that's the end. Thanks for watching.